The Galactic Council didn't just execute an envoy, they detonated a warhead wrapped in a man's suit and called it diplomacy. They thought humans were extinct between their ears. Now Earth's knocking on the airlock with a crowbar. The Galactic broadcast began mid-sentence. Ambassador Silas Rourke stood at the center of the Axis core, voice calm but firm, speaking to 70 alien species seated in a spiral chamber of glass and light. And with this agreement, Earth accepts diplomatic integration. The High Speaker of the Council waved a claw. Silas staggered. His mouth froze open. A red mist erupted from his spine. For 3 seconds, the galaxy watched a man die in silence. The speaker's voice followed, serene and smug. Earth's non-compliance with genetic uniformity violates Code Prime. Sentence: immediate termination. Peace maintained. Applause followed. Alien delegates nodded. The broadcast cut out. Then static. Then Earth's override kicked in. Every major channel, public and private, across the Orion Reach went black. A new feed replaced them all. Commander Dax Halloran's face filled the screen. A long scar crossed his jawline. His uniform wasn't diplomatic. It was war black. You just executed the wrong species. He paused, not blinking. For the record, I told him not to go. Silas believed in your system. Thought it could be fixed. Me? I believe in hammers. He reached down. A metal panel flipped. His hand hovered over a key glowing blood red. This is Annihilation Protocol 0. Authored by me. Ratified by no one. Earth didn't vote for this. We bled for it. He pressed it. Across the Sol system, AI cores deep in Mars began singing. Venus stopped transmitting. Every shipyard over Luna redirected its satellites inward. And Project Mimir, buried a mile beneath Olympus Mons, opened its third eye. I warned you, Dax muttered. Never mistake restraint for weakness. Within minutes, Council command ships across 6 sectors began receiving contradictory orders. Some fleets were told to retreat. Others to strike. No confirmations. Just endless chains of urgent, authenticated instructions, none of them from their own high command. By the time they realized it wasn't a glitch, 3 dreadnoughts had opened fire on each other. Mimir wasn't hacking. It wasn't attacking. It was rewriting command logic. Alien officers began hallucinating. Generals wept as their own lieutenants stabbed them, convinced they were traitors. On the diplomatic moon of Trill, a peacekeeper tried to negotiate with a human envoy. The envoy responded by handing him a crowbar. You'll need that in about 10 minutes, he said. Aim for the heads. Dax returned to the screen hours later. We're not at war with your species. That would imply you're equals. This isn't a war. This is damage control. A panicked counselor appeared in a rebuttal broadcast. This is an act of galactic terrorism. No, Dax replied on the next feed. Terror would mean we want you afraid. We want you corrected. The Council attempted a retaliatory strike. 46 ships launched toward Earth. None made it past Jupiter. They didn't explode. They simply stopped. Floating, silent. In the dark, Earth's ghost fleet decloaked. No records. No IFFs. No pulse signatures. Crewed by humans believed dead. Technically, they were. All volunteers. No known names. No known limits. They didn't speak. They didn't warn. They boarded and they reprogrammed. Not ships. Minds. On the Axis core, the High Speaker watched entire fleets go silent. His assistants screamed. His security detail fired at shadows that weren't there. Then came the final feed from Earth. Dax stood beside a coffin. Silas's body inside. Cleaned. Dressed in white. This man tried to save your system. You killed him for it. He looked straight into the camera. Now we dismantle yours. The Council tried jamming Earth's signals. Mimir adapted. Signal packets rewrote the jamming protocols. Communications collapsed planet by planet. And then Babel Burn dropped. A soft code pulse, undetectable, untraceable, hit every known translation system in the galaxy. Overnight, species could no longer understand each other. Language barriers reemerged. Treaties became riddles. Orders became gibberish. Only humans, chaotic masters of fragmented dialects, carried on. The speaker of Vurax tried rallying allies. He asked for help. Instead, he received a fruit basket and a Terran voice message. Nice words. Didn't catch a single one. Internal Council command fractured. Someone detonated the Unity beacon on Sector 9. On the moon of Darylis, an alien general begged her human prisoner for help re-establishing control. The human, bruised and laughing, said, "Why don't you ask Siri?" Then bit off his own tongue. Back in the Axis core, Dax appeared again. No rage. Just calm steel. Some of you are asking for terms. He nodded. Here they are. 1. No governance over Earth ever again. 2. No protocol enforcement beyond your own stars. 3. Anyone who calls us primitive again gets their planets rotated manually. He leaned forward. And last, stay off our lawn. Silence followed. A week passed. Then, 27 species signed surrender charters. 12 council members resigned. 5 fled into the void. The rest fell silent. Dax's final message was short. You wanted to teach us humility. Instead, you remembered who you're dealing with. He reached for Silas's coffin. Closed the lid. Humanity is not a threat. We're the consequence. The feed cut. The galaxy remained silent for a long time. Earth returned to shadows. No more broadcasts. No more diplomacy. But the stars still whispered. Don't provoke the humans. Don't wake the crowbar diplomat. And above all, never execute a man who still had a message to deliver. The Axis core was burning. Not in flames, but in confusion, precise, weaponized confusion. Dax Halloran had spent 20 years building this kind of war, one you didn't see coming, couldn't name, and wouldn't survive long enough to understand. Mimir had breached 39 command networks within the first hour. By the second, council ships were firing on their own logistics hubs. By the third, species who hadn't warred in centuries were demanding blood over mistranslated orders. The council called it sabotage. Dax called it performance art. Sir, we're receiving 12 surrender pings and 5 calls for ceasefire, said the ops officer beside him. Ignore the ceasefires, Dax replied without looking up. Accept the surrenders. Tell the rest they've got 15 minutes to uninstall their arrogance. On the far end of the solar comms array, a fleet from the Vakthari Dominion approached Neptune, weapons charged. It was a display. A bluff. Old playbook. Dax smiled, leaned into the mic, and toggled the open frequency. This is Earth Command. You're about 6 seconds from learning the difference between heat and hell. They didn't retreat. They vanished. Not destroyed, consumed. Absorbed into silence. The ghost fleet had arrived. No fanfare. No noise. Just missing blips and panic signals. Dreadnoughts blinked out like dying stars. The Vakthari flagship's final broadcast was a woman screaming about seeing her childhood home in the reactor core before it collapsed in on itself. Dax cracked his knuckles. They always think it's a trick, until it's theology. Across the galaxy, panic metastasized. The Paxari threw their speaker out of an airlock after a miscommunicated protocol blamed them for the fleet disappearances. On Verta Prime, their entire sky grid shut down, replaced by a single message in Terran English. You started this. We'll decide when it ends. The Galactic Council convened an emergency quorum. Dax watched from a secured relay. The broadcast was encrypted. Mimir decrypted it in real time. We must act, one of them roared. They're destabilizing interstellar order. They're feral, another spat. They operate without honor, without doctrine. Dax cut in mid-broadcast, overriding the entire network. Without doctrine? Damn right. Doctrine's how you lost your spine. We prefer results. One delegate stood, trembling. What do you want? Dax's voice dropped. Retribution. But I'll settle for humiliation. The council speaker sneered. You've made your point. We can negotiate. I'm not here to negotiate, Dax said. I'm here to sandblast your civilization off its high horse. Council security tried to shut down the feed. Too late. The override seeded itself into every terminal. Dax's face filled 100 worlds. We gave you peace. You gave us execution. You used a man's death to send a message. Now I'm returning the letter, wrapped in fire. He leaned forward. This is still restraint. In the background, a technician whispered, Sir, Section 9 just collapsed. 82 council ships vaporized themselves. Reports say they were following internal failsafes we never programmed. Of course they did, Dax muttered. Mimir knows their fears better than they do. The Babel burn wasn't just a virus. It was psychological warfare embedded in linguistics. Each word twisted just enough to breed mistrust, to make old allies doubt their commands, their translations, their very senses. Civilizations began imploding from within. The Redhari declared independence from the Council. Then 5 hours later, declared independence from themselves. Earth didn't fire a single missile. They just spoke louder. Aboard one fleeing Council corvette, a group of officers held a vote to decide surrender. The comms officer tried to broadcast peace terms. Mimir hijacked the transmission and replaced it with a video of Dax holding a crowbar and laughing. They surrendered anyway. On the diplomatic moon of Carelion, 24 species attempted a summit. It devolved into screams as none of them could understand each other. Every universal translator read different words. Some thought they were offering peace. Others heard threats. One species thought they were being challenged to a duel. The duel lasted 8 seconds. The winner fled the galaxy. Meanwhile, Dax stood in a bunker deep beneath Earth's crust, sipping black coffee as Mimir's pulse fed into his retinal feed. Status? He asked. Widespread collapse of coherent command structures. 74% of Council sectors are non-responsive or cannibalizing their own fleets. And the ones holding out? They're praying. Dax laughed. To what? We killed their gods with logic loops. The AI paused. Correction. They're praying to Earth. Across several worlds, alien broadcasts now referred to Earth not as humans, but originators, void architects, the Great Reset. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was reverence. And reverence was more dangerous than resistance. Dax watched another live feed, this time from the moon of Hestralon. A council tribunal was trying a member of their own for hesitation during human conflict. They convicted him in under a minute. His sentence was exile. To Earth. He arrived gagged, half-starved, and shaking. Dax personally met him at the docking port. You wanted to know what we are? He asked the broken counselor. We're what happens when you mistake civility for surrender. The man didn't respond. Didn't need to. Mimir had already translated his terror into 6 dialects. Across the void, Dax sent one more open transmission. To the remaining council members hiding behind your crumbling walls, you had a chance to treat us as equals. Instead, you chose to demonstrate your superiority. He set the crowbar across his shoulders. We just proved you never had it. End transmission. Silas didn't die for noncompliance. That was just the excuse. The real reason was buried beneath the Axis core, sealed in a vault no one was meant to open, hidden in a language the Council had erased from every archive, Old Earth Standard. He found it anyway. A file labeled Echo Seed. 8 megabytes of data that fractured 1,000 years of galactic history. That was the truth Dax now held in his hands. Run it again, Dax ordered. Mimir projected the decrypted file. A shaky recording flickered into the room. Silas, eyes bloodshot, face drawn, whispering like the air itself was listening. I've found it, Jack. They lied. All of them. We're not the newest. We're not the outliers. We're the source. The Council, they're not our judges. They're our orphans. Dax didn't blink. Pause. The screen froze on Silas's face. Not fear. Not anger. Just certainty. Mimir continued. The footage cut to ancient star charts, terraforming blueprints, DNA archives predating Council formation by tens of millennia. Human-made. Marked with Terran military designations. Silas's voice resumed. They found our worlds long after we vanished. Adapted to what we left behind. Mutated. Interbred. And when we returned, they called us invasive. Because we didn't recognize our own children. Dax muttered. He stood up. Broadcast it. Confirm? Mimir asked. Every channel. Every frequency. Don't just leak it. Tattoo it on the stars. Within hours, the footage saturated the galactic net. Not propaganda, proof. Irrefutable. Human genetic markers embedded in the Council's highest bloodlines. Dozens of species traced back to original Terran colonization missions, long thought lost to time and war. Reactions rippled like detonations. On Valthera Prime, a civil war ignited. Half the ruling caste declared themselves human descendants, demanding reparations. The other half accused them of heresy and started executing them in public squares. On Graxel 4, entire universities shut down. Professors who taught human inferiority were lynched by students chanting Terran codewords. Some alien scholars began wearing Earth-style suits in protest. Others donned old Terran uniforms like relics of forgotten gods. The Council scrambled to contain it. They issued a statement. False records. Human manipulation. Do not trust the data. Too late. The universe had seen. And Dax wasn't done. He addressed the galaxy directly. This isn't about vengeance anymore. It's about recognition. You erased us from your history, so we decided to return the favor. You called us primitives. You stole our tech, our colonies, our children, and wrapped them in chains made of laws we never agreed to. Now we remember. And now, so do you. He walked through the transmission studio, staring straight into the camera. Silas tried to reason with you. You killed him for it. You didn't silence him. You made him eternal. He paused. Just enough to make them lean in. Some of you are ready to fight us. Good. We like a challenge. But know this, you won't be fighting a species. You'll be fighting memory. And memory doesn't die. The feed ended. The universe didn't. It cracked. Council strongholds fell to riots. Alien militia groups started wearing Terran flags. The phrase, "We were first," became a revolutionary slogan across 7 systems. In a single cycle, Dax had turned Earth's legacy from rumor to revolution. Mimir compiled the damage. 17% of Council territories have lost central governance. 31% of military assets are non-operational. 46 governments are under popular revolt. And the rest? Waiting to see which way the wind blows. Dax smiled coldly. Then let's fan it. New packets of information dropped every hour. Terran blueprints. Lost war doctrines. Terraforming records showing Earth's hand on worlds the Council swore were theirs by origin. In every corner of the galaxy, the story changed. The most stable governments cracked first. The ones built on perfect order couldn't survive imperfect truths. The Council's high chamber called for emergency cohesion. Dax intercepted the meeting feed. Let me guess, he said to their panicked faces. You want to explain why your entire authority is built on a lie? The speaker stood, trembling. You don't understand what you've done. If the masses believe this. They don't believe it, Dax interrupted. They know it. Because your panic says more than any file ever could. He took a slow breath. Measured. Controlled. Dangerous. You built your identity on forgetting us. Now we've returned as a mirror. And you don't like what you see. He closed the feed. Back on Earth, silence held for a moment before someone in command whispered. What happens now? Dax didn't answer right away. He looked to the stars, as if expecting someone to answer for him. Then, we don't need to conquer them. They'll tear each other apart trying to figure out if they're more like us or more like you. The room nodded. War wasn't won by bullets anymore. It was won by breaking the story your enemy told about themselves. And Earth had just rewritten the universe's favorite myth. The myth that humanity was late to the party. The truth? Humanity hosted the damn thing. And now it was time to shut it down. They thought Earth was finished. That once the truth was out, once the galaxy saw humanity for what it really was, the momentum would collapse. That outrage would fade. That Dax Halloran's fury would burn itself out like a dying flare. They didn't understand the human tendency to escalate. Dax didn't just intend to disrupt the Council. He wanted to make its very language dangerous. Begin Babel Burn, he ordered. Mimir initiated the sequence without hesitation. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. There were no explosions, no deaths. Just a silence more terrifying than war. Across every Council-controlled system, universal translators began to glitch. Subtly, then catastrophically. Syntax inverted. Context dissolved. Words lost weight. On Grax's 9, a military leader ordered a fleet to defend the capital. The AI interpreted the word defend as detonate. 12 ships vanished in synchronized ignition. On Karvash, an economic envoy tried to sign a trade agreement. The alien interpreter read the signature as a declaration of religious war. 50 million credits and 4 cathedrals died in the same hour. Dax watched it unfold in real time, arms crossed. They'll blame faulty code, said the officer beside him. Let them, Dax replied. Let them tear apart their own networks trying to debug what isn't broken. Council networks scrambled. Command centers broadcast in isolated dialects. Some tried returning to ancient native tongues, but too much infrastructure depended on the translation web. Dax hadn't destroyed their systems. He'd corrupted the assumptions that made them function. And through it all, Earth kept speaking. Human diplomats used their own fractured mess of language. Creole, Spanglish, net jargon. It wasn't clean, but it worked. Humans adapted like viruses, unpredictable, unscripted, and immune to collapse through uniformity. Council leaders called emergency summits. They shouted across rooms, mistranslating each other's rage into threats. Alliances shattered. Treaties combusted under a dozen interpretations. The speaker of the Trinari species addressed his people live. We are being manipulated, he said. Earth is weaponizing language. By the end of the speech, his words were being read as a confession of guilt and surrender. His own generals arrested him within minutes. Dax issued one message. You wanted uniformity. We gave you chaos. Try leading an empire when no one hears the same thing twice. He turned to his staff. Upload the second wave. Mimir released mimic scripts into Council archives. These weren't just glitches. They were intentional errors that looked like administrator commands. Some called for fleet recalls. Others quietly swapped leadership orders, demoting generals and elevating cadets. On Polari 6, a teenage assistant woke up as Supreme Naval Strategist after an automated hierarchy shift. By noon, he'd launched an unauthorized siege on a neighboring planet over a misread diplomatic insult about soup. Earth's fingerprints were nowhere. No virus, no traceable hack. Just instructions written in the Council's own syntactic format. You can't punish an enemy when you don't even understand how they're moving. Council scientists held press conferences, fumbling explanations. Dax held none. He sat, quiet, sipping tea in the command center, watching everything fall apart. I thought you said you didn't want war, Mimir said. I don't, Dax replied. I want what comes after. What's that? Choice. Mimir processed the word. The Council doesn't offer choice. It offers compliance. We're just leveling the playing field. The moment everyone speaks differently, you're forced to listen harder. And that's when real conversations start. Outside Earth's orbit, a half-dozen alien ships hovered in silence. Not in aggression. In observation. Refugees from the broken systems. Scientists, rebels, deserters. All listening. All recording. Earth's silence was beginning to sound like authority. A new phrase began spreading across non-human networks. Let the humans talk. Not out of trust. Out of fear. Humans didn't always speak clearly, but when they did, the galaxy shook. Dax issued no ultimatums. Earth made no demands. And that was the point. He let the chaos breathe. Let the Council bury itself in misinterpretations. Let them fail to coordinate, to rebuild, to respond. The High Speaker of the Council tried one last message, sent on a narrowband encrypted burst. Earth has proven itself to be the greatest threat to peace. Dax responded through the same channel. No. We're the first species in 1,000 years to define peace on our own terms. Your methods are monstrous. Only to monsters. The channel cut. Dax stood, walked to the viewing deck, watched as dozens of Council patrols hovered in place, unsure of their orders, unsure of their friends, unsure of language itself. He tapped the glass once. It's not about control. It's about memory. Every civilization you crushed forgot what it meant to speak freely. We just reminded them. The officer beside him spoke softly. They're going to retaliate. Maybe, Dax replied. If they can agree on how. And with that, Earth re-entered radio silence. Not because they were hiding, but because the galaxy was still trying to figure out what silence actually meant. For the first time in memory, the rest of the universe was forced to stop talking and start listening. The Axis core cracked. Not with fire, not with fury, but with the quiet collapse of meaning. Words no longer meant what they were intended to. Orders bred chaos. Pleas sparked mutiny. Protocols fed on themselves. The Council's last weapon had always been its structure, hierarchy, precision, predictability. Dax shattered it with a whisper. He stood aboard the Resolute, Earth's command vessel, facing the final broadcast from the core. High Speaker Voxus Prime, draped in ceremonial armor, stood alone. Behind him, the Council's chamber burned. Fractured windows opened to vacuum. He didn't flinch. Commander Halloran, Voxus said. We may no longer understand each other, but your message is clear. This ends with you. Dax didn't smile. No, Voxus. It ends with truth. He cut the feed. Mimir projected the Axis Core's defensive patterns. They were faltering. Council ships scrambled, some defecting mid-battle, others firing at phantom targets. Earth's Ghost Fleet had infiltrated deep, unmarked ships hijacking comms, redirecting weapons, disrupting oxygen flow just enough to make command decisions hallucinatory. Dax turned to his officers. Initiate final sequence. Mimir chimed. Confirming final sequence, Project Cradle. Confirmed. Project Cradle wasn't a weapon. It was a message, broadcast through subquantum pulses into the very neurofabric of galactic species. It didn't kill. It reminded. Not history. Identity. The sound of a child's laugh. The scent of rain. An instinct to protect instead of obey. Across Axis-controlled worlds, soldiers dropped their rifles. Crews wept. Machines paused. Even Council AI hesitated as irrational empathy flooded command circuits. Voxus launched his flagship. Dax boarded his. They met over the ruins of Council Station 7, where 1 billion had once cheered declarations of dominance. Come to finish your myth? Voxus snarled. Dax stepped onto the Council deck, crowbar in hand. You killed the diplomat. I'm just the rebuttal. The two clashed. Voxus was tall, augmented, reinforced with alloyed bone and plasma thread musculature. He swung a gravity pike that could bend steel. Dax dodged it, close, brutal, primal. He didn't move like a soldier. He moved like a man who'd been angry too long and didn't care what broke. You think chaos is victory? Voxus shouted. No, Dax grunted, landing a blow to the exoskeletal joint. I think you lost the moment you decided order meant obedience. Voxus charged. Dax sidestepped, cracked his crowbar against the armor's breathing port. You could have learned from us. Voxus growled. You mean assimilated? Voxus struck again. Dax took it, coughed blood, then drove the crowbar through the pike's emitter. You never understood. He spat. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because you forgot how to fight. He smashed the pike shaft, grabbed Voxus by the chest plate, and dragged him into the viewport's glare. Look outside, Dax ordered. Ships spun. Council vessels fighting themselves. Alien flags burning alongside Earth's. Do you see control? No. You see choice. You built an empire on silence. We reminded them how to scream. Voxus lunged. Dax didn't flinch. He stepped aside, letting Voxus slam into the console behind him. Mimir's voice echoed through the chamber. Speaker terminated. The ship froze. Council frequencies went silent. Mimir confirmed. All Central Command relays offline. Galactic Council leadership is defunct. Strategic cohesion null. Dax stood alone. He opened a galaxy-wide channel. This is not a conquest. This is a consequence. We didn't fire first. We didn't want war. We wanted a seat. He looked out at the stars. You gave us an execution. So we gave you memory. He paused. To those now free, rebuild something better. Or don't. That's the point. Across space, rebellions became revolutions. Council worlds declared independence. Ancient species long silenced found their voice. Humans didn't lead them, they had simply shown them how to walk away. Earth vanished from the galactic map again. No trade. No diplomacy. No requests. Just one final encrypted message. We're not your enemies. We're your past. Don't make us your future. Dax returned to Earth, alone. He visited Silas's grave. Not a monument. Just a stone. One line. He spoke. They listened. Someone had left flowers. Dax sat in silence. Mimir asked, Was it worth it? Dax looked to the sky. I didn't do this for worth. I did it because they made me. Silence followed. Then the soft hum of a world that remembered how to speak for itself. Somewhere far beyond, a child on an alien world read an old Earth phrase carved into a wall. Humanity wasn't the fire. We were the match.